open the Thursday, August 11th. It's hard to believe it's August 2016 meeting of the Marin Local Agency Formation Commission to order. And I'll read the roll in this. You have the roll, Rachel.
I have the roll.
Okay, would you mind reading the roll?
Not at all. Commissioner Arnold. Here. Chair Blanchfield.
Here.
Commissioner Condon.
Here.
Commissioner Murray.
Here.
And Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Our alternate Commissioner Cayos.
Here.
Let the record reflect that Commissioner Burdick, Commissioner Sears, Commissioner McGinty, and Commissioner Connolly are not present.
Okay, thank you, but we do have a quorum, and thus we can conduct our business this evening. The first matter, does any commissioner wish to consider a change, alteration, mutation of the agenda this evening? If not, I'll continue on to our first item, which is we are going to, at this time, recess into closed session. We are going to do so under the Government Code Section 54956.9, which permits us to discuss our exposure to potential litigation. And after we're finished with our closed session, we'll come back here. I shall report any action the Commission should take. But before we recess, if any member of the public would like to speak to the Commission on the matter before us in the closed session, now is your opportunity. Don't see that, so we are going to recess, and we will be going across the hall to the conference room of the mayor of the city of San Rafael. All right, we're back from our recess into closed session, and I have to report out that the commission gave the executive officer instructions to develop an agreement with the law firm of Liebert, Cassidy, and Whitmore to assist the commission on litigation matters and to report back to the commission on his success in that matter. So we have before us a consent calendar, and what I'd like to do is pull one item out for just a brief discussion. That's number 7, and that deals with the notice of Commissioner Gary Phillips' resignation. And if there are no other matters that people would like to discuss, I'd just like to move directly to it, and then we'll move the total consent calendar. Commissioner Phillips could not be here this evening, and since this would have been his last meeting, I'm sure we can entice him back at a future meeting to give him, I don't know, a fruit bowl or something like that. But Gary's been on the commission just over a year, been a faithful commissioner, and I think we owe him our gratitude and to express it at a meeting. So I just wanted to note that so we don't pass over it in a rather perfunctory listing of it. Okay? Also, I leapt over open time, the time that we have set aside for any member of the public to address the commission on a matter that we're not discussing this evening. Normally in these cases, a person can submit their question to the staff, and the staff will get back to them on our behalf. So is there anybody? There is. I'll hold you to 3 minutes, and now it's on the...
Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of Marin LAFCO, and is my microphone on here? Can't tell. Hello, test.
There you go. You gotta pretend you're a singer, and you go right into the microphone.
I don't think you'd be too happy with
that.
I
didn't say sing. I didn't say sing.
But just a brief informational announcement. August 2nd, the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors voted to place the Community Separators Protection Ordinance on the November 8th general election ballot. It's going to extend our voter protections for community separator lands for another 20 years. This includes the ballot initiative is the original 17,000 existing acres, but the board will also be adding another 36,793 acres through the general plan process for a grand total of 53,576 community separator acres. So please come on up and enjoy the view.
Thank you very much. All right. I caught myself in time, so the consent calendar, I've said what I wanted to say for item number 7, and good. The gentleman who just spoke last, could you, if you'd like, give your name so we have it for the minutes? An anonymous speaker.
Thank you. Rick Savell, 499 Adobe Road, Pengrove.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved. Second.
Motion and second to adopt the consent calendar. All commissioners in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? I will just note before we, no commissioner opposed, no commissioner abstaining. It passes. Before we move to item number 10, which is a draft report on comprehensive sphere of influence update for the Marin Municipal Water District. In the consent calendar is the policy handbook, which is really the first time we've had something like this, and it just passes off. But a lot of work went into it by the commission, and I think it's an excellent document to guide us. It's always something we refer to because it's really our regulations, and it helps inform the public of what the rules are that we follow. So, good work, everybody, and pleased to see it. Okay, public hearing item, item number 10 is the, as I said, the draft report on the SOI update for the Marin Municipal Water District. Keene, do you have words for us?
I do. So, as you mentioned, this public hearing is really the first of two steps the Commission has before it with respect to going about your scheduled sphere of influence review and update for the Marin Municipal Water District, the governmental entity best known, for providing potable water service to 10 of the 11 cities/towns in Marin County, and by our count, serves about 186,000 people, which would mean about 3/4 of the total countywide population. Before you, as I mentioned, is the first of two steps. This first step is staff bringing you a report that we've prepared that looks at Marin Municipal's sphere of influence relative to all the things that the legislature and your own policies have you consider. And of course, the overall context being, and I still say relatively new, it was not too long ago that the state told all the LAFCOs, and in particular Marin LAFCO, you've got to be in the business now of reviewing and updating all 65 local agencies, spheres that are under your jurisdiction every 5 years or so, and to either justify or make changes to those sphere designations to reflect what you independently believe, right? You independently believe represents these agencies' appropriate service area. The key governmental tie-in is, of course, under state law, cities, towns, special districts cannot even come to LAFCO and seek your approval to annex or serve lands if it's not already within their sphere of influence. Yes, there are some very Byzantine exceptions to that comment, but generally speaking, the sphere is this gatekeeper to all future municipal growth and development. So with that context in mind, we've brought you a draft report today with two purposes in mind. One is to get your initial feedback to make sure that the document itself meets your baseline expectations Parenthetically, I'll just note, this is the first sphere report your current staff has produced for this commission, so it probably looks a little different from what you perhaps saw under Peter Banning. And then second, assuming that at least the document meets your baseline expectations, we'd like your blessing to go ahead and circulate a formal public review and comment notice on this report with the idea that we would endeavor to come back with a final version, with or without revisions, at your October meeting. And it would be in October where we'd bring you a resolution where you would actually take a lasting action. Now, I am going to come back to this comment, but just as a placeholder, I do have a unique question for the Commission about how you may want to go about providing public notice, and I think that will make sense once I go through my presentation a bit. As for the report itself, I would certainly suggest it's a relatively light document. It's a lot lighter than some of the documents you're going to be seeing on other sphere of influence updates coming forward. And that is because, generally speaking, the sphere generally makes sense under 2016 lenses. But there are a couple takeaways I nonetheless want to highlight for the Commission's benefit. The first being, like all sphere updates, you have to have a source document, and under state law, the source document is a municipal service review. Well, here's where we make use of that water study we just got done with. So that's the source document for this sphere update. And of course, in doing that water study, you've already independently vetted Marin Municipal's administrative, service, and financial capacities, and by and large gave the district a clean bill of health relative to, again, your regional growth management interest. And that certainly orients us at staff to just focus in on the sphere itself and whether changes make sense. And ultimately, we've come up with two possible sphere adjustments that we think have some merit for the Commission to think about. They do have different time horizons. And if you take a look on page 149 of your staff report, you'll see this physical depiction of these two study areas that we've come up with. One is study area A1, which is the incorporated community of Hamilton. And then the larger study area is B1, and that is the unincorporated community of Nicasio. So let me just talk a little bit about these two study areas and staff's thinking. With respect to study area A1, this is an approximate 1,300 acre, again, incorporated section of southern Novato that is currently inside Marin Municipal's sphere of influence. It's not in the district's boundary. In fact, this commission took action back in 2002 to detach the entire area out of the district. And it's, I think we had it listed at 1,100 residential units. For unclear reasons, we didn't follow through with a concurrent sphere of influence adjustment at the same time. I think there's probably some reasons why that happened, but nonetheless, here in 2016, I would suggest this is an opportunity to do a cleanup, an administrative cleanup, and formally follow up on what your brethren or your predecessors did some 16 or 14 years ago and take this entire area out of the sphere. So that's the Hamilton part of the study, and we'd recommend we do this now as part of this 5-year study. The other study area, B1, is more of a telegraphing comment. So B1 is the unincorporated community of Nicasio. It's about 23,000 acres in size, and it is depicted by using the census-designated boundaries. So staff's comment here is, relative to all of the things that LAFCO law has you consider, and that includes, okay, is there a need for potable water service? Arguably, the answer here is yes, whether it be by way of pipes or by way of trucking. I think you can make an argument, yeah, maybe there is a need for potable water service here. And then the other unique and increasing focus of LAFCO by way of the legislature is social or environmental justice. And that gets back to this discussion about disadvantaged unincorporated communities, or DUCs. And while it is not currently, it does not currently qualify as a DUC under the most recent census data release, 2 years ago it did, and right now it kind of teeters under this statewide definition. Now, why is that relevant to this commission? Well, it's relevant because the legislature tells you it's relevant, and by and large, they want you to be in the business of adding any unincorporated ducts to cities or special districts, spheres that are in the business of providing water, sewer, or fire protection. So our comment here is going forward, we need to have more discussion, but we're not there yet. So kind of taking the commission's cue about using these studies as a telegraphing tool and planting some seeds with the idea that we harvest not now but down the road, we're recommending that you include this formal comment really directed to MMWD as well as the community saying this is something of interest to LAFCO for our own reasons. We anticipate coming back to this in more thorough manner in our next 5-year review, but in the interim, we would like to see some internal discussion on this matter, so when we do come back to this by way of state law, it's a little more organic and at least the community and MMWD have some time to respond to LAFCO. So, again, overall, as these sphere updates go, I would consider this, again, a relatively light report. We've only come up with 2 potential changes. One immediate, that involves taking Hamilton out. The other, Nicasio, is more of a signal for another day. And this is a public hearing. I did have a question, and I'll just pose it to the commission about how we go about noticing these type of documents. And so under state law, the only requirement you have to notice a sphere of influence change is that 21 days in advance, I need to cause a notice to be published in a paper of general circulation, like the Marin Independent Journal. And then we have to post it to our door and wherever we meet. And if we operate a website, we've got to put it on the website. That's the minimum requirement. Certainly best practice would also mean that we would directly mail a notice to any specific landowner or registered voter that we know is subject to a draft or at least a staff recommendation for a change. Well, again, with respect to Hamilton, you're looking at about 1,200 at least landowners, let alone if there's more registered voters. Given we are really talking about an administrative cleanup, I would suggest we perhaps think about not doing a direct mailed notice, given I think we might incur more or generate more confusion by making them aware of this process to begin with, and it may engender discussions that ultimately you really can't address on the dais anyway. I think the ship has sailed, relatively speaking, that this is now a North Marin Water District. If someone came about because of our notice saying, well, we want to get back into Marin Municipal, that might be a little difficult, and I'm sure Mr. DeGabriel might want to speak to that point as well. So our suggestion would be, yes, not maybe a best practice, but given what we're talking about, kind of waive the practice of noticing Hamilton, but we do go ahead and notice the 300 or so landowners in Nicasio. If for no other reason, I've talked to a handful of them, I think they would benefit from at least knowing there's this governmental entity out there that is suggesting at least there's some merit for discussion. And so I would take that kind of dual approach to how we go about this. So I'll turn it back to the commission, and again, this is a hearing.
Okay. It is a hearing, but so I understand is this is a draft.
Correct.
At this point. And if it's blessed to go out to the public to view and agents to view, that would be the action, and then it would come back as a final draft where we would have the hearing continue to discuss that.
Correct.
Okay. So first, are there any questions commissioners such as Commissioner Arnold may have of the executive officer in his report?
I do. Just to clarify, right now Hamilton is billed and is in North Marin Water District, correct?
Correct.
So this is just clarifying some old language. Cleanup.
It's a policy cleanup from LAFCO's perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Craig, I'm sorry. Good. Called my attention if I miss you.
So, Keen, you mentioned water, sewer, fire protection. I imagine police protection, too, as considering factors. Hamilton apparently all these are Novato-based, so it seems like it makes sense to keep it within that area. For Nicasio, the large reservoir out there, the water service, whose jurisdiction is the water service for Nicasio now? Is that
As we have defined Nicasio here, it is in no man's land. There is no public agency that has any legal right, whether it's through the sphere of influence or the jurisdictional boundaries. So they're all well dependent, or if there may be some private water systems, communal water systems.
So other services such as sewer, fire protection, police, it's also
It's all on
unclear,
the,
it's not-
yeah. If it's not, it would be fair to say the county would be on the hook for fire and police right now.
Please.
Okay, thank
They
you.
are.
Okay, any other commissioners have questions before I open the public hearing? And of course, we'll come back to discussion amongst us, but this is clarification from the executive
Yeah, I
officer's
agree
report.
with Keene's comments about waiving or whatever, whatever we otherwise would do for Hamilton.
Yeah.
Noticing, because that ship has sailed, the train's left the station, whatever you want to say, and the people, there's not too many people here know, maybe several of us, the people in Hamilton, as they moved in and found out most of them were paying a notably higher water bill to MMWD, would come in
Sure.
would come into the North Marin Board for years. How do we get transferred? It took a decade or more. Chris will speak to that better than I, but it's happened. And so this, as you said, it's a cleanup. So why cause confusion by sending out notices? I'm not 100% persuaded on the Nicasio thing, because you acknowledge there is no public water service when you get past the west end of Lucas Valley, upper Lucas Valley, everything all the way up to Big Rock and out through Nicasio. It's all wells, and I think a lot of people, I suspect, would want to keep it that way for their own reasons. But why? I don't know. Just noticing, unless there's some legal reasons we have to, I think that also could cause some confusion to people out there. Like there's some public water service being contemplated.
Okay. Thanks for your comments. Again, we're trying to get clarification from the executive officer on his report, but I've got Commissioner Burdick and then Carter.
All that water out there in the Nicasio Reservoir goes the other way. None of it stays in West Marin. It's Marin Municipal's water, and it's not sticking around in Nicasio or Point Reyes Station or Inverness. There are ducks in Nicasio. The Wall Street Journal 3 years ago reported that Nicasio was the most expensive real estate in the United States. More expensive than Hillsborough, more expensive than Beverly Hills, more expensive than anywhere in the entire world. So where are the ducks?
Yeah.
I suppose it's the same logic that people in Alto, who are currently a duck, would make that argument. Luckily for staff, we're not generating the census data on this.
Because I'll be glad to get, I don't think there are more than 25 significant property owners in Nicasio, and I'll be glad to go out and knock on their doors and give them the survey, and they could buy me a beer at the Rancho.
Commissioner Condon.
Just a point of clarification. Are you saying then, Keene, that Nicasio would be in the sphere of influence of MMWD or NMWD?
This report is suggesting there may be merit to Marin Municipal, adding it to Marin Municipal sphere of influence. And so we're not talking at all about North Marin Water
Okay.
District.
So it's MMWD then. Thank you.
Okay, everybody clear on what's in the report? And if so, I'm going to open the public hearing on this. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Chris DeGabriel, General Manager of the North Marin Water District. I put a call into Keene when I received the agenda for tonight's meeting and his staff report as well. And I just want to offer some clarification only in regard to the Hamilton Field reorganization, which occurred in 2002. Although I have an opinion about the Nicasio issue, I'll keep that to myself. The reorganization, and hopefully you'll give me a little more than 3 minutes because it's a little bit of history here. The reorganization was a mutual agreement between the two districts at that time to resolve a long-standing dispute with regard to water service in the Hamilton Field area that had been going on since 1959. At that time, as you well know, when Hamilton Field was first developed in the early 1930s, water service was extended from San Rafael to Hamilton Field with the Hamilton line that the federal government paid for, and that facilitated the air base's development. In the late 50s, Hamilton Field was expanded. Now, at that time, Marin Municipal Service Territory was extended, and a finger of its service territory came into the Hamilton Field area. However, the North Marin Water District was already serving a portion of Hamilton Field at that time, and Marin Municipal was continuing its service to the old portion of the base. So there were duplicate service providers and big disagreements among the management and the boards of who should serve that area. My board directed me in the late 1990s to try and resolve this dispute once and for all, and it made sense to make North Marin's service territory and sphere of influence coincident with the City of Novato boundary in that area. And that's exactly what this reorganization did. Detachment from Marin Municipal Service Area and annexation to North Marin. A couple of clarifications. The reorganization in the Hamilton area was for 980 acres, not the 1,350 that's reported here. So I'm not sure where that 1,350 came from. And at the time, Hamilton Field had not yet been redeveloped. So the property owners at that time were limited, which was good for the reorganization under the Cortez-Knox Act at the time. So the federal government owned the U.S. Coast Guard Spanish housing area. There were 282 government housing units there at that time. Many of them were vacant. Probably at least half of them were vacant at that time. Lanham Village, a 154-unit townhouse condominium development was in place. North Marin was serving both of those at that time. Additionally, Novato Unified School District had its Hamilton School and a charter school. There was a base exchange, Navy base exchange triangle there that at that time was vacant, along with the commissary area and a lot of vacant old Hamilton buildings around the bachelor's officers' quarters, the officers' club, the pool, the gym, the bowling alley, all that stuff. So most of the area was under the jurisdiction of the General Services Administration, the federal government at that time. So it made it much easier to facilitate the organization. So I couldn't agree more with Keene's perspective on not noticing each of these individual property owners now, because they weren't there when the reorganization went on in 2002. And only want to offer my clarification that the area, as I understand it, was 980 acres, and the meets and bounds description was prepared and submitted with the reorganization documentation before LAFCO and approved by LAFCO. And the number of units at that time were 436, not the 1,100 and whatever is identified. So I just wanted to offer that clarification. I'm not going to stick around to hear your deliberation anymore, but I wanted to offer that. So, thank you.
That's a quid pro quo for speaking, you know. Thanks very much. I thought we'd give you a new title of explainer-in-chief here, which seems to be your role. Thank you very much. Okay, any other member of the audience wish to speak on this matter?
Mr. Chair, Rick
Yes.
Snell, 499 Adobe Road, Pen Grove. I just had a question that in regard to Nicasio, is there Keen, did you refer to a map of B1? Is that
Yeah,
a proposed, is that on the website? Is that something, is it a boundary study area?
yeah,
or,
we can, I can email that to you.
Okay.
Our website is not fully
Candace's-
functional right now.
Candace's
That's right.
network. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other comments to the commission on this matter? Keenan, I think it will be appropriate, if I understand this process here, to close this public hearing.
Correct.
And then when the final report comes back for review, then we'll open the public hearing on that. So I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. We can have discussions amongst ourselves after that, and then after that, we'll go to the next agenda item. So,
So moved.
Second.
motion and a second to close the public hearing on the draft report on the comprehensive sphere of influence update for Marin Municipal Water District. All commissioners in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstains? Motion passes. Comments? I think we'll have to do away with that. I have a couple of comments. One is notice, and I know it's somewhat after the fact, but nothing breeds concern than those with conspiracy theories. And without just a simple pointed notice, this is what we're doing, I'm afraid that we could spawn conspiracy theories. So from my standpoint, I would like to see a notice go to our friends at Hamilton, but specifically point out exactly what's occurring, so there's no question about it. That's my comment. Yes.
Well, along with what you said, instead of sending a notice to each person, there's at the Hamilton Forum that everyone belongs to, and I think we could just post it online on the Hamilton Forum. They'll get all crazy, and they'll think that we're changing them. But if we just make it clear what we're doing, that this has been the case for how many years, I agree with you. I think it's always better to be more transparent than less.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense.
And for Nicasio, put it in the Point Reyes Light.
They may get a Pulitzer Prize.
It might.
Yes, you know. And then my last comment is on Nicasio. I must say, looking at that big blob, I'm troubled because of what it says, which is this is providing water is one step to urbanization. So in looking at that, I would be looking at what I understand we're really doing is providing water service to those who are there because of a number of reasons. And we're not saying, okay, we are going to be opening that extreme large area up to water service for all, which is a first step in urbanization, followed by source service. So anyway, that's my concern. To me, that's a real red flag. And that's it. Great.
So, Keen, thank you for the very detailed listing of all the assessor parcel numbers within the Hamilton community. I just wondering the function of that. Perhaps there's a state law function that within the document, we have to go by parcel and indicate each parcel that's affected. And then the second question is really in relation to Nicasio. Is there a same approach there, or since this is more of an urbanized location, we need more details such as that?
Thank you, Commissioner Murray. So with respect to the reasoning for the long appendices that show all the landowners, well, it was really for the effect of, the comment about, if we did noticing, this is how many people we'd be noticing. And just as a parenthetical comment, so Mr. DeGabriel had commented that when they had done the reorganization, it was 900-something acres and 400 and something units. Well, it's very possible we have picked up some public right-of-way in some water bodies that are generating the additional acreage. But I am relatively certain using GIS that, in 14 years, this area clearly has developed from the 400 units to the 1,100 units. So that's just a side comment or follow-up to why our numbers are different. With respect to Nicasio, I think you, Commissioner Murray, you were asking, why signal it as part of this report if staff's not suggesting we do anything now about it?
Excuse me, and a detail to why not parcel listings of all Nicasio?
Oh, so actually there are parcel listings for Nicasio as part of Appendix B,
Okay.
beginning on page 173.
Okay, very good.
And just another parenthetical comment, we learned from our mistakes, and you do have correct page numbers on this entire packet. That was painful for staff last time, so we've learned from our ways. So we did the same thing, and again, really just to show the number of potential notices. State law doesn't require that we actually list out the APNs for a sphere change. We would if, we ever went about another boundary change.
Okay. Well, if there are no more comments, you're looking for direction on initiating the formal 30-day public review of the draft?
Yeah, and just for clarification, the two questions I had would be, Commission's majority temperature on how to go about noticing in Hamilton, and then separately, your preferences on how to go about noticing in Nicasio.
Well, I think in Hamilton, Commissioner Arnold came up, at least in my judgment, with a very good proposal, and she agrees with that. Yes. And so if anybody has more of a genius approach, now's your opportunity. But if that works for staff, that's fine. And then, yes.
So, yeah, I agree with taking it down to the most basic level. So these are the neighborhood associations and groups. Is there such a presence at Nicasio with a stronger group? I see some larger owners. I assume this goes all the way up to the edge of Big Rock, which is the edge of the Los Colinas Sanitary District, including, Skywalker Ranch and folks like this. So how would that be vetted? And would this, you discuss this with adjacent locations as well, such as in Lucas Valley, or just Nicasio itself?
Staff's thinking was just focusing on the two studiers. So Nicasio, I'm not aware of any community forum out there, but I think there was a recommendation, maybe the Point Reyes Light. We could run instead of doing a legal announcement, which is usually the smallest print possible, we could do, it'd probably be the same amount of money if we mailed everyone out there. We could do an actual announcement that's a little easier for the eyes to see. Maybe that's a good compromise.
Keen, one other suggestion, sometimes it's a no-cost item, is the water bills that go out. You could put a brief sentence if the website is up and running well, perhaps a web link or something.
Yeah.
There's no water bills.
Oh, yeah,
Or sewer
correct, yeah,
bills.
no water bills. So it worked for Hamilton. Yeah. Trying to think how we do this for Nicasio.
Yeah.
Don't you think that?
seen so many trusts?
Yeah.
The Dolcinis, the Giacomini's, the Barbonis, and all the
Are there any other,
Fundraise light is the best way to
Yeah.
get the word.
Oh, yeah, sure, because none of these people live there.
Yeah.
yeah,
They're in a post office box in Chicago somewhere with a bunch of lawyers. And I run my little 16-person private road, and I have to go around and collect the money to repair the road every 8 years. You've been up our road a few times, right, Jack?
Yeah.
are
About
there
a lot
any,
of potholes. 14 of them are trusts. I'm getting checks from my neighbors who I've known for years, and it's not them, it's the Johnson Family Segregated Trust. I go, who are these people? Well, that's how we run our property.
so Keen, would you be
Okay.
able to to figure out a way to get the notice out?
Yes, especially if the commission is agreeable to just using this point raised light perhaps as an announcement. And, we come back in October and, I could report back either that worked or that didn't, and, you can always readjust.
Because it's just the first round, so is that
Yeah, that'll
in
work
agreement with everybody?
fine. That works fine.
Okay, and Jeff has returned.
I am here. Thank you, Carla, for solving all the issues while I was gone. So, it's been,
No action on this?
no, it's not listed as such, it's more of a consensus of the commission, and it appears that we've got that piece in our time. All right, this is a continuation of a hearing that's been going on for a long time, Rachel. And this is approval of a scope of analysis of the San Rafael and Lucas Valley Regional Study.
Thank you, Chair. The scope of analysis returns before the commission from its draft form at the February 11th regular commission meeting, and it remains largely intact with a few additional items to note that I will address later. Staff intends the scope to guide the preparation and timing of the agency's scheduled municipal service review on the general governmental services in San Rafael Lucas Valley region. We will evaluate the general regional governmental services along with the related finance and governance considerations along the north central portion of the 101 corridor, anchored by San Rafael and outlying neighboring communities. And we will consider the potential needs and issues in these areas, which will also include Lucas Valley and Santa Venetia. It will include an independent review of 9 public agencies within this 30-square-mile geographic area, and these agencies include the City of San Rafael, County of Marin, Marinwood Community Services District, County Service Area 6, Galenas Creek, County Service Area 9, Northbridge, CSA 13, Lucas Valley, CSA 18, Las Galenas, CSA 19 Country Club, and CSA 23 Terra Linda. The majority of these affected agencies were included in past municipal service reviews prepared between 2004 and 2006. We would like to build off these previous reports with more of a quantitative focus and compare between past reports and see what has improved since then. The scope is designed to provide a timeline in completing the municipal service review, and we've organized it into 5 distinct phases. The first phase is setting the parameter, and the region along the northern central 101 corridor has been designated as the geographic area for the study, and this would necessitate evaluations of the distribution, maintenance, and administration of the services provided. It has been proposed at the last meeting that we create 3 broad categories that will serve as the analysis focus for the study and that we think will traverse along all the 9 reference agencies. And these have been identified as community development, public works, and public safety. Moving on to the second phase, this will involve preparing the agency profiles, and this will incorporate information collected from agency questionnaires and interviews. We anticipate, due to the necessary data collection, that this will probably take up to 5 months. Unlike the Technical Advisory Committee, staff does not expect to use this. Generally, for the general governmental services, we think we'd have enough expertise and knowledge to review the metrics that we want to use for these services. So we think it's in our realm of knowledge, and we won't rely on a technical advisory committee. The profiles during this phase will also be circulated to the agencies for review and comments, and to identify any technical edits. The third phase is the draft report, and that will be presented to the Commission for discussion and feedback. It will be a complete document and include an executive summary along with written determinations. For the fourth phase, that will commence the formal public review period. This will be where staff will do all associated outreach to interested parties and stakeholders. And we would also like to make presentations to any parties that request. The fifth and final phase is the completion, and that is set for May 2017 due to the pushback with this presentation. The first action would be for the Commission to formally accept and file the final report, and the second action would be for the Commission to adopt all of the written determinations through a resolution. Staff would also like to mention we've held meetings with the County of Marin, City of San Rafael, and Marin Wood Community Service District to discuss this impending study and the scope, along with any sphere updates that accompany it. Staff has also suggested, in speaking with these agencies, to lead a community workshop, and this will be included in the Phase 3 for the draft report. So, community agencies or citizens can tell us their views on their area and what they think that they would like to see for services or sphere updates. I know staff has also spoke with Commissioner Connolly on this, and he approves the guidelines, and he especially wanted to emphasize his approval for this community-led workshop. And also, staff would like to note that we are considering including an appendix on school districts that would focus on related growth management issues or the services provided or trends with enrollment. And with that said, it is recommended staff approve the scope of analysis and identify any desired changes.
Thank you. Commissioners have questions of Ms. Jones? Yes, great.
So, Rachel, it looks like right now we're in the parameter setting phase. 3 areas: community development, public works, and public safety. Within each of those areas, on community development, would there be a review of economic analysis? So what areas could support what type of services? So if there's some thought of additional services or support, what economic basis would each of those areas have, or some suggestions in terms of maybe combining areas, this sort of thing?
Definitely. That would definitely be a focus.
Okay. And then on public works, just interested in kind of the watershed approach to facilitating some of the analysis, and how each of those areas in flood control, which could be importance of Lucas Valley as well. And then under public safety, I think we've discussed several times that the fire and police services seem to be issues in those locations, so I'm sure that's going to be kind of front and center in the study. So appreciate your report, and thanks very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner
I
Arnold?
would just like to second what Commissioner Murray said, which is the watershed approach. That's what everyone's doing now.
Okay, this is a continuation of the public hearing, so if any member of the public would like to speak on the proposed scope of analysis, here's your opportunity.
Hi, this is sort of a sideways question. I'm Judy Schriebman. I live in Los Ranchitos, and I'm also on the Las Colinas Valley Sanitary District Board with Commissioner Murray. I don't know if this fits within the scope of what you're asking for here, so I'm going to launch the question. If it doesn't, I'll just email it to Keen, and we'll do it that way. Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I gave you those titles not because I'm here representing either of those groups, but because it tells you what I focused in on, which was the 91 Glenside area, and I'll explain why I get there. It says within it there's special approval terms included with the landowner recording an agreement that runs with the property connecting to annexation to San Rafael if and when that's proposed in the future.
And so this is in the scope of analysis?
No, and that's
it's something totally different.
So it might be sideways, but it's sort of a sphere of influence question, and I'm not sure if we can take this up now or not.
You know, that seems like a general question to me that I would suggest. That's why we have a staff, is to explore that with you.
Be happy to do that. Otherwise, the scope is looking good, and thank you all for your sincere dedication to this.
I appreciate your comments very much. Thank you. Aha.
I just wanted to comment and appreciate Commissioner Murray's and Arnold's comments about the importance of looking at the watershed. We had it was late and it had to end up in Superior Court to get straightened out, but we had a heck of a battle in Pengrove with Rohnert Park, who was proposed cutting off the northern 300 acres at the very headwaters that pedal in the watershed without knowing it. And that led to a number of other issues that had to be resolved in court. So, good thinking.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing now on the scope of analysis.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to close the public hearing on the scope of analysis for San Rafael and Lucas Valley signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstain?
I'll move that we approve the scope of analysis.
Okay,
And great job by staff.
great, good.
And I'll second that. Oops.
I'll
second that, but I wanted to make one comment that, Rachel, I think it's really super that you're including the information about schools in that particular area, because right now there's a lot of controversy going on, and so I think it's going to be very timely and it will get a lot of notice.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Which brings me to a question of Keene. Under the ABC law, can we do what is proposed in the appendix?
Well, yes.
Okay, you answered
okay.
my question. I knew that was often a third rail, so it's good we're doing it. And it's good that we can do that. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this scope. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioners abstaining? And after many months, it is complete. Thank you. Now you can go to work. All right. Now we move on to other business items, and one we've been talking about from our strategic planning retreat last time to now, and that is a new financial accounting system.
Thank you.
Approval.
I could just go right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very,
It speaks for itself.
yeah. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and second to approve the financial accounting system and related actions, which includes the amendments to the policies.
Yeah, so 6 actions. I'll just for the record say what these 6 actions are, which are in your report.
Right.
So you are approving a transition of Marin LAFCO's financial accounting system from the County of Marin to our own standalone system operated and managed by staff through QuickBooks. That's number 1. you are then authorizing, you are actually authorizing an authorization letter to Wells Fargo to include all of the things they need for a governmental, to open up a governmental checking account. 3, you are then authorizing your executive officer to go ahead and open up 2 checking accounts with Wells Fargo, one primary, one secondary. And then 4th, we are doing a handful of policy amendments that you have in your packet. Who can sign, what are the spending thresholds, and then perhaps most importantly, and I think to the Commission's benefit of getting some safeguards in this process, an MOU with Southern Marin Fire District, who has been incredibly helpful, as has the county in this entire process. But Southern Marin Fire District will come in at a cost not to exceed $7,500 and be our bookkeeper over this transition. And then last but not least, of course, you need the money. We're asking that you approve a one-time authorization for us to take $126,000 out of our account with the county and put it into Wells Fargo.
Okay, I just have one question on the language, and that deals, and this is on page 211 and maybe other places, it deals with reconciliations and reporting. Says LAFCO shall reconcile account statements in QuickBooks on a monthly basis by someone other than the executive officer. Any particular ideas on who that someone should be?
Well, in the interim, will be the bookkeeper for at least the first 4 months.
Okay.
Ultimately, be a commission clerk or someone else. It just can't, it shouldn't be me.
Yeah, I know, but it's more than just open-ended.
Yes.
It's, okay, and that's evident somewhere.
And we could certainly put it in here if the commission wants that
yeah.
prescription.
It's Southern Marin Fire for now, isn't it?
They will be our bookkeeper for the first 4 months, and we could certainly say by someone other than the executive officer, including but not limited to contract bookkeeper.
Okay, something that's, you can tie it down to. Yes, I'm sorry.
Some discussion before.
Well, I think we've had that.
Well, no, I mean, this
Yeah.
is moving kind of fast.
Yeah.
And I realize it's not as sexy as some of the other topics, but I for one,
Okay,
I
you and then
recognize-
Commissioner Bird.
okay. I recognize the train is leaving the station as we speak. I'm a realist, but I just got some personal misgivings. I think Keene acknowledges that he and I assume his predecessors have had good relations with the bookkeeping people at the county, the auditor, the treasurer, and so forth, and not only doing things on a regular professional basis, but now and again, as staff has changed at LAFCO, not often, but it has, you've got some continuity there with the county treasurer, the auditor, that was now the finance department. I'm a little out of touch. And some of the districts, and I can think of several that have run into some financial difficulties through embezzlement or some other irregularities. I've been told by people now long retired, managers of some of these people I knew personally, they were so grateful that they'd had the involvement of county staff that were familiar with their operation, their books, and came in to help them resolve some major issues. And this has happened more than a couple of times. So now that the ship, as I say, is sort of sailing, we're on our own. We've got the cushion for a brief time of South Marin fire protection, and after that, I mean, Keene's got enough on his plate. I mean, are we going to have a bookkeeping staff doing this? This is a little more complicated, I think, than we don't have a huge budget. We don't have a fleet of vehicles or a lot of people, on staff. But I see this as something that's going to be a little more complicated than if we were to, if we had the option to continue with the county staff. Keene, you kind of told me that this isn't something just that an idea you came up with, but Mr. Given, I guess, or one of his staff people kind of told you that they need to cut the cord with not just LAFCO, but a variety of special
Because we have a brand new
districts.
system, a brand new computer system that won't allow this anymore.
Wow.
Because we stopped SAP.
Plus, we're a small agency that's a cost to them.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I know that.
Yeah.
But just the same, I don't think it frees the county of some of these things. It's a nuisance to them, and they've done it well. I've never heard anybody, of the many people I've known, special districts, fire, sewer, water, so forth, they've all been pretty happy. But I just think this is gonna, and maybe we don't have a choice, but I think that this is gonna be a little more complicated once we're on our own.
Well, that's one thing we'll find out. I think what we're finding out is we're on our own now, and there are some problems in certain areas that we have to address. And this is one of them, and we'll see how this works out. I'm fairly optimistic, and it looks like we have
you're
good
right.
assistance. Well, I hope, yeah. So, anyway, good point, Jack. I don't think, if I'm reading between the lines here, that there was an indication that we were unhappy with the county. If anything, it would have been great if we could have continued, but they were very helpful giving us a heads up in advance that, it's likely that this won't be able to continue in the future, just giving you a heads up and assistance, and I think we're really appreciative of that.
Are they cutting the cord of all of the entities, not just
Yes.
the little ones?
Yeah.
Sooner or later.
Yeah. Commissioner Burdick, you also had a question.
I do. And regardless of the precarious nature of our relationships with HR and the retirement board, I've never heard any complaint about the bean counters at Big Pink, but that's neither here nor there. I don't think it's us divorcing them. It's them telling us we need to resort to our own devices. I am a little concerned about a relationship with South Marin Fire. I have nothing against South Marin Fire. I hope they gobble up all the other fire departments down there. But they're subject to our jurisdiction, and now we and them are going to be commingling funds, or we're relying on them, and I'm sure I'm being overly fastidious. Maybe it's my server at home taking care of my LAFCO cell emails, but about dealing with someone else who we have jurisdiction over, and how long is this going to last, and when will we be in our own?
So a couple of ways to answer that. First is the reason why we reached out to Southern Marin Fire Protection District was actually at the recommendation of Department of Finance, because they have done this transition 6 months ahead of us. So we are piggybacking on their recent experience of getting out of the county's then SAP system and doing a QuickBooks setup. So we benefit from replicating the wheel, if you will. We're terming this MOU, as we presented it, to be through the end of this calendar year. At the end of the calendar year, the Commission's going to have another discussion. It certainly wouldn't surprise me if one of two things happens. Either staff comes to you and says, we've got this, we've got the controls in place, we understand QuickBooks, and we can do this with the controls in place, and or we say to you, I think we should get a professional bookkeeper who comes in every 2 weeks to reconcile or write checks. The expense would not be that big. Most of the JPAs in Marin have that. They don't have a finance department. They just contract with bookkeepers. So December 31st, or probably our December meeting, we'll come back to you and really with an update saying this is where we're at, and here are options, going into the new calendar year.
Great. So it makes perfectly good sense, as long as the minutes reflect that, we've got kind of a arm's length. We're relying on this for purely technical stuff, and we'll revisit it so we don't get
Well said.
criticized at some point later.
Well, and
Okay.
can just one thing too, that we're always subject to audits and always have to produce the audits. So I think that just keeps everything very clear cut.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I just want to make sure that this slam dunk thing is there are no more questions. If there are, you can submit them in writing. Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor of the new financial system and indicate by their pleasure by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner
Can I just
abstaining?
abstain?
Well, no, you
I
can
mean,
oppose or you
I
can,
think we're gonna regret this, but, I'm not sure if we have a choice or not, but,
we'll submit it in
One-
writing.
we have one abstention.
yeah, I do.
You do, you're abstaining or you're, okay, okay. Okay, so the motion is passed and we'll move on to future policy implications for SB 239, dealing with fire service contracts. Keen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is kind of a heads up, if you will. As we talked about at our last few meetings, really at our last meeting, Senate Bill 239 was enacted earlier this year, and admittedly, staff didn't really think too much about it until some of our local agencies, Corte Madera being one, Larkspur being other, the county being others, started to talk to us about it, and we realized this was going to be a bigger issue, and ultimately, it's going to require some policy implementation by this body. And here's why. LAFCO since 2001 has been responsible for overseeing and ultimately approving the process for cities, towns, and special districts to be able to provide services beyond their jurisdictional boundary by contract or agreement. And the legislature, prescribes certain things you have to think about should you go ahead and approve these type of outside service arrangements. And in enacting that legislation back in 2001, they included a relatively broad exception, which said anytime a contract between two or more public agencies is in play in which the contracted service is an alternative or a substitute for services already provided, hands off LAFCO, that's exempt. You don't have to get involved. So that has been the baseline for some 14, 15 years. Well, lo and behold, what Senate Bill 239 explicitly does is that it carves out and waters down that exemption that I had made reference to. And it now says any contract between two or more public agencies involving fire service that meet certain criteria, you are now going to be subject to LAFCO, and we're going to create a brand new code section within CKH 56134 to follow. And I'll talk about some of the procedures. But what this means is you are now being asked to dive into a topic that, frankly, from my own experience as staff, we really haven't really gotten involved in. The idea of fire service contracts and the idea of when they are appropriate and relative to your growth management interest. So you have this immediate bill that's now in the books. You have, and I should go back, what are the triggering criteria that a fire service contract now has to come to you? Well, there's two factors. One is if 25% or more of either of the contracting agency's service area is affected. So that's one trigger. Or if 25% or more of the employee status of one of the contracting agencies is affected. Under either of these scenarios, they've got to come to Marin LAFCO, and you've got to focus in on, by way of the state law, the financial aspects of that arrangement. So again, all of this is brand new, and what has caught us a little flat-footed at staff was some of the implicit consequences of this. Certainly, an implicit consequence of this bill is you are now a new arbitrator, for potential grievances in which two cities come to you or two public agencies come to you for an outside fire service contract that maybe one or more labor groups is not a fan of. And so they now have a venue to come to LAFCO and say, well, you haven't, met the threshold under state law to approve this. So that's one implicit consequence. The other is the way the law is written, and we didn't write the law, but the way the law is written, it means automatic aid agreements, they got to come to LAFCO. Now, if they're renewals of existing contracts, I think you can make the argument, although you should do it in policy, you don't have to come to LAFCO. But automatic aid agreements, the way the law is written, need to come to you now. And that's a relatively common, as I'm learning, a relatively common exercise among agencies. And then finally, and this goes to an issue that you will see in the form of an application as early as October or perhaps in December, functional consolidations involving fire service are now going to come to LAFCO. And so there's this example in the Twin City area where the two cities are trying to develop a joint power authority to create a standalone fire service entity. Well, that triggers compliance with this law. So now they're going to come to you, and they're going to be the first one out of the bat, I think, in California, and how we kind of make sense of a law that was written without any real input from Cal LAFCO. So it's not a perfect law. I have highlighted a handful of kind of outstanding questions. So if you go to page, let's see here, starting on page 219 of your packet, it's in the analysis section. In bullet point form, I've identified 7 good policy questions that ultimately this commission needs to weigh in on. It runs the gamut from how you define employee status. What does that mean? The law doesn't give you prescription. You probably need to have some prescription so the agencies know when to come to you. To everything about, do you want to have, kind of an open-ended waiver, local waiver for automatic aid agreements? And if so, we probably need to have some written justification on how we go about that. What about mutual aid agreements? All this goes to this idea that the legislature handed you something that probably has good intention, but it's imperfect. And right now, staff is having trouble communicating with the agencies about how to process their potential proposals, because I need to hear from you eventually as to how you want to implement this particular law in Marin County. So there are 2 things that I'm asking for the commission tonight, and I probably should have done this at the start, so I apologize. First is just to get some general feedback and direction on how you want me to prioritize our policy language going forward, and hopefully kind of reflecting and responding to these bullet point comments that I offered in the report. And then, consistent with our adopted work plan, get a formal blessing so I can go forward and start working on actual language to bring back to you as soon as your next meeting. And that includes working with the affected agencies. I've already had one general stakeholder meeting with all the fire chiefs in attendance, and by and large, they understand. LAFCO is not the generator of this. This is just something that fell on our lap. But that said, we've got an active proposal from the Twin Cities that, according to the city managers, need to move forward sooner than later. So I'm going to pause here. This is kind of a big item, and I'm happy to answer questions or go through any detail.
Keen, this would seem to me to be something that Cal LAFCO, as an institution, would be embracing because of its effect throughout the state and giving some guidance.
Well,
is that occurring?
They prepared a 1-page primer that suggested that all local LAFCOs develop local policies relative to what you want to prioritize. So they gave us the go-ahead of tackle it.
Jeff, may I?
Yes.
Rather than embracing it, as you suggested, being the cynic that I am, I was thinking that Cal LAFCO initiated this.
No.
Through, but
This
not
is
at all.
this is a CPF. This is an International Association of Firefighters, California Professional Firefighters bill. Period.
And they went to a big dog to carry the bill.
Yep.
I see.
And it's one thing to talk to the city managers, the fire chiefs, we got to sit down with the union. IAFF Local 1775, they represent everybody in the county, and Bob Briard runs the group. They're my clients for 25 years. And you ought to sit down and talk to them, Keen, because they probably got more juice and more marbles in this game than the fire chiefs do.
Right. I would say that would be really good direction. I know that, our jurisdiction is involved in this, and everybody is concerned about what type of role LAFCO is supposed to play on this, and does LAFCO know what they're supposed to be doing? And but I think it might really behoove us, and I wouldn't mind either if maybe a group of us could get together with Bob Briard and anyone else who's involved, maybe from the Chiefs Association, and work together to develop something rather than come up with something and then get a lot of pushback.
Yeah, it seems to me like a process that's going to take time, and it's time well spent, because you're getting everyone that's going to be affected by it into the process of resolving it. So to me, this is a big undertaking.
And the relationships, by and large, when it comes to this kind of stuff between the union and the fire chiefs, has been, in the last 10, it's been really pretty good, very, very positive. But I mean, you look at Keene's bullet points. If Keene and Rachel have to do this by themselves, I mean, it's great for the legislature to amend the act and say you got to do all this. Well, where's the money for us to do all this? And this is a lot of work unless you can get these stakeholders involved and start reaching some kind of general meetings of the minds, not specific, but general, and that would be really helpful, I think.
Yeah, the difficulty is you have a work program now that's just filled up. And to me, if I were looking at this as the staff member, I said, well, this is going to occupy 3/4 of my time this year to get something good done, not I got some language out, but to get a lasting document and groups together to work. Craig.
Thank you, Chair. So the county is basically in charge of emergency services throughout Marin. There's what's called Disaster Council that meets just down the road from LAFCO offices on a quarterly basis. I'm sure if you connect in with the county's EOC office, I would think this would be a really good place to vet. Other than special districts, all other local governments are represented on that disaster council. So folks with a variety of areas besides just fire, but also have an interest in mutual aid, being fire, flood, and earthquake, the three top emergency items that may affect and drive this. So it'd be good to talk to the unions, good to talk to the police chief, but in terms of logistics and how things go down, I think the county EOC and their disaster council maybe vet it out with staff first, and possibly, since it is nearby Keene, that might be a good place to land as well. So I would suggest that.
I'm the chair of that.
You are.
Yeah.
There's your answer. Give her a pen and paper and it'll be done in days.
I did hear the discussion, bad. I leave the room and now what?
You were elected.
All right.
So I was just suggesting that besides just the fire chiefs and unions, to land at the county's disaster council that has a variety of representatives that are interested in mutual aid agreements and really the three prime emergencies that'll come up in Marin. Okay.
Kane, is this helpful or not?
No, it is helpful. So I have two good suggestions about as we develop some language to first interact with, and I'll seek out the names specific that Commissioner Burdick mentioned offline, and then the EOC as another alternative. And what I would also suggest is, so everyone has a staff report, you can certainly individually, as thoughts come to you, we would only benefit from hearing, your takes on any of these bullet points. Again, these bullet points represent what we think are kind of the open-ended things that the legislature didn't tackle, even if that means, coming over for coffee at LAFCO and just, telling us how you see this working or it should work. That would only help us eliminate or at least reduce some of the noise you'll hear. You're going to hear noise by the time we get to this.
Yeah, but one of my objectives would be to minimize the noise. You minimize the noise by getting everyone we've talked about into the room working together. I would see LAFCO as the person or in the institution of herding the cats.
Yeah.
And because somebody's got to take hold of this and be the runner of it. And if everyone else is saying, what is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
You need to say, we are in the process of muddling through, and we can only muddle through with all of us getting together. And out of that, hopefully will come something that will work just about everywhere instead of just one institution at a time.
At the risk of upsetting the commission, the policy committee already has a lot on its table. I mean, the policy committee's got a lot of work already. You could create just a working group with, two commissioners to not only work with staff, but ideally maybe one of the commissioners come to some of these meetings that we're going to have, because I think that would help, especially once we start meeting with the city managers and whatnot. If that's an interest, and again, the chair, you have the discretion to create these working groups off dais, so maybe that's something we think about.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, whenever you can use commissioners, I think in our next agenda item, it shows what you can do.
Yeah. So I've got my feedback. We'll start working, and then through the chair, we'll start talking about all opportunities to do the uniform and coordinated outreach.
Okay. So is that good enough with folks? Okay. So therefore, we will move to the web design. And I understand a considerable amount of effort has been put into this.
Well, and let me, on behalf of the committee, Carla, Lou, and Craig, you do have a supplement to the agenda packet that's on in front of you today, which summarizes essentially the results of our interview process. I don't know if I don't want to steal too much thunder from the committee members, but at the end of the day, the background is your existing website, hey, it served a purpose, but it has its limitations. It certainly has limitations now since we can't actually really update or operate it. But this is all about, branding LAFCO in kind of 2016 light. And so we went about a formal bid process. The committee ultimately got 6 proposals, which for our small agency and our small job relative to what's out there, that's a pretty good number. The committee went through each of the first 6 proposals, identified 3 that somewhat separated themselves from the pack, and those 3 were then invited in for interviews and then some supplemental follow-up queries on our end. And I think I would speak for the entire committee by saying we were very pleased with all 3 finalists, Planetaria, Civic Plus, and Matson. But at the end of the day, and as we provide in our supplemental report, Civic Plus just came out ahead and separated themselves from the others. An organization out of Manhattan, Kansas, for Commissioner Arnold's home state, that has great experience with governmental agencies. I know they do Corte Madera. I know they do City of Richmond. So we have members on the committee who have seen their work up close, and it's good. And so the recommendation, and I'll leave the committee members to maybe go through any details that the commission would like, is to ultimately authorize us to go ahead and enter into a contract with Civic Plus consistent with their scope of work. They did come in at a price a little under $24,000. However, unlike any other vendor, they've offered us this opportunity to annualize the cost over 4 years. So in fact, we would only be allocating right up front a little less than $12,000 this year, and over the next 2 years, and at the end of it, we get a complimentary website redesign as part of the process. So I'm going to defer to Carla, Craig, and Lou for any added comments.
Okay, yeah, just to start out, it really was a fun exercise, and it ended up being more difficult at the very end because a couple of them were so close. But Craig or Lou, do you want to start out with any comments? Oh, okay. It was, like I said, it was difficult. The Madsen and Civic Plus were almost as close to a tie as you could get, with some strengths in one place and some in the other. The one thing that I will say about Civic Plus, well, several things. Number one, as Keene pointed out, they had a flexible payment plan, which really was helpful. Also, unlimited redesigns were allowed. If you didn't like one design, you could come back. They would redesign it again, whereas the other companies were much more limited. Then also there was the benefit of Corte Madera that has a brand new website that they worked on with Civic Plus. And the town clerk that worked directly with them said that it was a fabulous experience, that she could call at any time. They could either, if it was easily correctable, they could do it right on the spot while she was on the phone with them. If it was a glitch in the software itself, they would be able to tell her when it would be corrected, and she said they were very reliable as far as their projected times on when it could be corrected. It was also very user-friendly, and that was one thing that I think we're running into such problems with what we have now, is that it was using a system that was user-friendly, and right from the start, other staff members could use it for their departments, and it was very, very easy. So in addition, it was brand new, but the grand jury did give us an A+ rating on the website because it is very robust, and you can put so much on it. You can have so many different menu items that, and it doesn't slow it down. Everything comes up very quickly on it. They had positive answers for everything. They could search, or you could search PDFs if you wanted. There were just a lot of pluses there that I thought were very, very helpful. And it was kind of fun having a little meeting with them. It was quite a personable group. Nonetheless, having said all of that, it was a hard decision, and but I think it was a good one, and I think we have a lot of flexibility. I think it will be easy to get up and running very soon. It was easy to migrate all the information from our current website right on over to them. So I think it will be very exciting, and I like the features that they will do a redesign after a period of time so that we stay very modern. And Lou?
Well, I'll say that I agree and concur with Carla to a great degree. I don't think it was being fun the same way you do, but that's good that you think it was fun. That's a good positive thing, because you have to accept these kind of technologies and move them forward. So I think they'll do a fine job. We have to manage them, as you do with any vendor providing a consulting service, which is what they would really be. You have to manage them as a consultant to make sure you get what you want, but I think they'll do a fine job. So I certainly concur with the decision.
Okay, Craig?
So Madison Planetarium seem to be smaller organizations. They all had LAFCO experience, so we did kind of check on that, and it was a good experience to see them present in detail. And then as our committee or subcommittee, we did kind of fact check. So we looked at searchable PDFs, how they deal with that. We asked a bank of questions, such as Marin maps and how they'd interact with that. I think the general feeling is that Civic Plus was just had more strength. There's more of a full strength group that could support our Marin LAFCO and going forward and interconnecting at different intergovernmental levels, as well as the ease of using it. And the presenter at Civic Plus walking through the experience and how to make updates seemed very straightforward. So I think Lou had probably more technical experience than Carl and myself in terms of websites, but I had a really good feeling that a new clerk or someone coming in the LAFCO could work well in that. And then also professionally, I know that it's functioning on larger local area governments. So it was very close. Each had their strengths, but I agree that Civic Plus seemed to be the firm that would serve us best. So it seems to be a good selection.
So we do need a formal approved motion in a second to take on alternative action 1 specific to the Civic Plus proposal and the cost provided therein.
Okay, well, I'd like to move that we adopt the work plan for the new website design with Civic Plus.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, and I have a question. Oh, how soon would this be up? What are time scale under ideal conditions are we talking about?
So depending on how many, and we have an unlimited number of page designs they'll give us, but I think the goal from our end is to get something sooner than later, given our circumstance, but certainly by the end of the calendar year.
Okay, I just wanted, and does it run QuickBooks too? Yeah, don't forget the.
Oh, no, that's a center deal, Chris. Don't worry about that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve it, and also a comment on all the hard work people put in. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstaining? It's passed. Thank you very much,
Great.
all of you.
Thank you.
CalAFCO Annual Conference, King.
Just very quickly, so Rachel created a supplemental memorandum that you have on your before you, and it just identifies ultimately CalAFCO asked each commission to do 3 things in advance of the upcoming conference, which of course is October 26th through the 28th in Santa Barbara. The first is appoint at least one voting delegate, if not an alternate voting delegate. Obviously, this is dependent on commissioners knowing if they're going to attend. To date, I know just Commissioner Murray has indicated interest. And then the second 2 are somewhat voluntary, and that is it's an opportunity for those county and district members who may be interested in running on the CalAFCO board to get nominated by their peers. And if so, then the chair has some paperwork we can help him fill out to effectuate that nomination. And then separately, it's also an opportunity to make a nomination for any of the dozen or so achievement award categories, ranging from project of the year to, legislator of the year. As we did last year, because a lot of the commissioners don't know yet if they're actually going to be available or perhaps want time to think about it, we could always just have the commission delegate to the chair the ability to make these appointments and or nominations offline based on any member emailing them and saying, yes, I'm going to be there and I want to be on the CalAFCO board. That, or if there's absolute interest now, we can talk about who wants to be on the board and who wants to nominate a project.
Heck, the chair.
Yeah, right.
I have a suggestion about a project.
Okay.
Did you ever apply for the water study?
Well, it has to come from a commissioner nomination.
Well, I nominate the water study.
So we've got one. Thank you, Carla. Very nice of you.
What else?
Well, there's, so there's a list of categories
What about the policy document?
that certainly can be up there.
The handbook you're talking about?
I would suggest
yeah, the handbook.
we wouldn't want to nominate one more than one category, like one project of the year candidate. Although I do like the idea of stacking our odds, so I mean I want to come back to that as well. But so we've got one known project that we'd like to nominate, and I think we could work with the chair on at least that, and then if any of the other commissioners know that they would like to attend the conference, certainly tell me or Rachel, and we'll take care of all the registration stuff that goes into it. And again, so far, we just know that Commissioner Murray is interested.
And you need this information by any date certain?
There's some deadlines, so
Or maybe it's explained here if I would just read it. Till Monday.
yeah, so.
Recruitment Committee is accepting nominations.
So for the achievement awards, we need to know by the end of this month. We need to get the chair to fill out the paperwork by the end of this month. Board nominations, you have until the end of September 26th.
So you
Okay.
have until the end of August.
And not to dissuade Commissioners Jack or Lou, but Craig did do a great job and came very close 2 years ago for the district seat then.
He's a tough guy to compete with.
And I personally would encourage Commissioner Murray to consider running again.
Well, we can write him in, can't we?
You can, although if he doesn't make his nomination speech, it might look a little awkward. So,
Well,
so it
just
sounds
get
like we could
somebody
work
off the street, don't
offline
worry.
with the chair.
Okay. Well, if anybody else also comes up with the idea of the documents.
I like the logo. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a category for that, but it seems to be that's kind of Keene coming in and the whole rebranding of Marin.
What about the badges?
So,
You got-
a graphic area might be kind of unique to Cal LAFCO, but kudos, and these are little name tags, and Keene's did a really good job. So, yeah,
Yeah, that'll do it. Well, you can give
that
them
might be
out
for
as
consideration.
prizes for something. This goes back all the way to 1997. This is interesting. Dory Adams was the outstanding clerk in 1999. Might be a precedent there.
So do we have an executive officer report?
Yeah, there's got to be outstanding, yeah, we'll come up with one. What about that?
Just on the executive office report, we did, myself and Rachel did interviews for a new extra help position earlier this week. We've made an offer out to our top candidate, and hopefully we'll hear back from them. So hopefully this will get some more staffing resources as early as next week. And that's all.
Keene was the outstanding Cal LAFCO member.
Thank you for
Where'd
seeing
you
that
find
highlighted
that?
comment.
2011.
2011?
Some of us refer to it as just simply Person of the Year. It's a better title.
Said with all great humility, right?
Right. Wow. Yeah, there you are. But they have you with the wrong LAFCO.
It's a typo. Okay, so
Right, yeah.
so we just make our suggestions to you?
I
Is that
guess
right?
you
We
do
just turn them
via email, and let's start it over at number one again. Okay. I wish you guys would take this seriously. So we have our understanding of how to respond to the annual conference. And I would suggest that we really think about nominating our executive officer, and if that's okay with you, I'll find an appropriate.
Absolutely.
An appropriate pigeonhole for him, and I'll actually do the paperwork on that. So, okay, and I need a motion, though, to his,
Hold on, Jeff, Commissioner announcements request.
there's, okay. Gee, I thought you were all ready to go. Commissioner announcements and requests.
Thanks. So, we talked about in the policy handbook, the records retention and policy.
Yes.
And it seems like it's kind of deferring how we're going to approach that. If sometime in the future, if you could kind of just provide us some structure to that, how many files we have, how dated some of these files are. And what I'm used to is basically there's a list of files to be disposed of. Now, since we've moved into new offices, perhaps you've considered this, it might be time to implement some policy in terms of record retention and how we're going to start managing things. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have one we can get to move the boxes. Are we digitizing old records before we, I thought there was a program for that went back.
Well, we do have a number of records, and Candace Buzar did a very good job of taking a lot of the resolutions and putting them into PDF. But they have not been digitized relative to the threshold standard of JPEGs, which can't be altered or anything like that.
Right.
That's one of those things that the Budget Committee has talked about, at what point do we, invest in an electronic management document system.
Yeah.
It was really that or the website this year, and through my groveling, we went with the website, but that's something we can.
Maybe we could put you up for groveling. There's a Groveler of the Year award.
Have a lot of talents in that area.
Well, this is something we might kick around at the strategic planning retreat that would lead to the budget, is the importance of it. Because there are a number of valuable records that should be kept. Okay, has anybody got an adjournment motion? Ah, good.
Second.
And I got a motion and a second, and that automatically says we're adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you very much.